everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Heather and today I'm going to be talking you through all the books that I would like to read in November. I cannot believe how close to the end of the year it is, but I am also very excited for this month's reading. As it is my birthday month, I am not holding myself to too many things that I have to read or themes that I have to stick to. So I've tried to put together a pile of books that hopefully will make me very happy to read and will spell good things for the new year of my life. There are two things that I'm going to hold myself to, however, one of which is reading one of the two remaining Shakespeare plays out of the recognized canon that I have left to read. So that will be either King John or Titus Andronicus. I haven't decided which yet. The other thing that I need to do is read No Time to Spare by Ursula K. Le Guin. This is a collection of, I was going to say short stories because they do feel like short stories, but it is also biographical, so it's almost like a memoir. They're essays, I suppose, is what I'm getting at. This is in honor of Nonfiction November and my challenge to myself to read at least one nonfiction per month. It's also a book that I discovered when I was spending time with Marissa at Blatantly Bookish as it was on her shelf. She read the first essay aloud to me, and honestly, I wasn't expecting it to be as funny as it is. I've never read any Ursula K. Le Guin, but somehow I had her pictured as a much more serious author. But I really enjoyed that first essay, so I'm hoping I enjoy the rest of the collection just as much. Next, I will be participating in Simon Savage's Autumn Hibernation Readathon, and for that I will be reading two books. The first is The Splendor Falls by Susanna Kearsley. I have been loving Susanna Kearsley books recently. I hope I like this just as much. They are, I would say, more historical fiction, but there is definitely a heavy element of romance to them as well. This is the story of Emily Braden, who goes to the small town of Chinon in France with her cousin Harry on some sort of historical expedition, and Harry then disappears. But apparently that's not entirely unusual for Harry to do, so Emily doesn't think that much of it. But in addition, she begins to discover the history of the place, and apparently it is also related to Queen Isabella, who was the wife of King John. Ooh, so maybe I'll read Shakespeare's King John this month. And she also begins to discover that the castle nearby also was home to a young girl during World War II. And she begins to unravel all of these stories and uncover more and more secrets of this town. Like I said, I've loved everything Susanna Kearsley has written so far, at least that which I have read. And this sounds a little bit darker and more mysterious, so I think it's perfect for autumn hibernation. In addition, I will also be reading Modenski Square by Eva Ebbetson. This is an Eva Ebbetson book that I didn't realize existed. I haven't read any of her children's books like Witch Witch, but I love her, I'm calling them new adult, because to me they feel like they're in between young adult and regular adult fiction. And this is a story that is classic Eva Ebbetson and tells the story of Modenski Square, which I believe is somewhere in Vienna. Yes. And this is, of course, pre-war Vienna, so we are living in the glamour of everything that Vienna has to offer. Pre-World War I should say. And so you are in the glories of Imperial Austria, and it tells the story of the square and all of the various characters who live there and influence each other, but it is mainly about Susanna Weber, who is a young seamstress there. I loved Vienna when I visited many, many years ago now, over a decade, and I would love to go back soon, but this may be as close as I get in the meantime. And Eva Ebbetson's writing is always very cozy and heartwarming and just perfect for this time of year. Next, as I am getting a little bit superstitious about my reading, I thought that whatever I read around my birthday itself might influence the way that next year, or indeed next decade of my life, is going to go. So I have picked out 3 books that I hope will have a positive influence on my life. The first is Miss Pettigrew Lives for a Day by Winifred Watson. You may have seen the film with Frances McDormand and Amy Adams. I did many years ago and really loved it. But it is the story of Miss Pettigrew, who is a nanny, who is sent off on this job, which she discovers is not to take care of children, but she ends up taking care of a young nightclub singer, or socialite, I can't quite remember which. And they both end up influencing each other's lives in a really lovely way. The next book I thought might be a nice positive influence is Under a Dancing Star by Laura Wood. I read A Sky Painted Gold by Laura Wood and I absolutely loved it. It's a more cheerful Great Gatsby set in Cornwall, which sounds fabulous. But this one I think sounds even more fabulous, as it's essentially a retelling of Much Ado About Nothing, which is my favorite Shakespeare play, but set in the 1930s, in definitely England, possibly Cornwall again. The book itself is gorgeous, and I hope that the interpretation is just as gorgeous. And the last book that I thought would be a nice positive influence would be Mistress of My Fate by Hallie Rubenhold. And here I'm going for more the sentiment of the book than the actual plotline. But you may recognize Hallie Rubenhold from her nonfiction work, such as The Five or The Lady in Red, sometimes known as The Scandalous Lady W, which I love and adore. And I knew she wrote fiction as well, but I was lucky enough to get my hands on this first book recently. This series is called The Confessions of Henrietta Lightfoot, and it follows Henrietta Lightfoot throughout 18th century London society and how she has to try to work her way up the ranks of society, relying purely on her beauty and her wit. And that sounds fantastic. Next, I will hopefully be making a sojourn into New York City the week afterwards to go to the opera again, which I'm slightly nervous about, but I'm also very excited about. And so I thought these books would go perfectly with a trip into New York City. The first is The Painted Girls by Cathy Marie Buchanan. And this tells the story of 2 sisters in 1878 who, upon losing their parents, have to find various means of supporting themselves. One of them ends up becoming one of the models to Edgar Degas after enrolling in training in the Paris Opera Company, in the Paris Opera as a dancer. And it says the other falls for someone called Émile Abadi, but I don't recognize that name. If you know who that is, please let me know down below. But I have heard wonderful things about it, and I love dance, I love opera, I love the idea of where this is going to go, and I hope I love it as much as I think I will. The second book that may accompany me into the city is Sex and Vanity by Kevin Kwan, which I found at a library book sale recently, which is his latest novel and is a retelling of A Room with a View, but retold through modern New York Asian society. And it takes a really good lens at race in addition to class. And I'm hoping for something really fun and yet also really sophisticated. So we shall see. And lastly, after Thanksgiving, once we have our Christmas decorations up and everything feels really cozy and happy, I might feel brave enough to start Perfume by Patrick Suskind. I have been wanting to read this for years and years, but I have never been brave enough. But I desperately also want to watch the film. So I'm thinking, while we have all of our Christmas lights up and everything feels very cheery and very happy, it might be safe enough to read this. Perfume is the story of a young man who is born without any kind of scent himself, but he is very sensitive to the scents of others, and his pursuit of the perfect perfume leads him to become a serial killer. And I've heard that it is beautiful, that it is enthralling, and I can't wait to find out. But I hope I don't freak myself out too much while I read it. So there you have it. Those are some books that I hope to read this coming month. Let me know if you have any further recommendations for me, and I can't wait to tell you more in my wrap-up at the end of the month. Until next time, be safe, be well, and happy reading. Bye everyone.